Welcome to another episode of the It Starts With You podcast. I am so excited for my conversation today with Cathryn Baker. Cathryn and I have been connected. She's a client of mine. I love following her work and content on LinkedIn, and you will too. So, Cathryn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm excited too, and I'm honored.
Oh my goodness. As with every guest, we're talking at the beginning and we're just catching up and getting ideas. And I was like, wait, we need to hit record because we need to capture all of this gold that we're talking about. One of the things that you're going to really get out of this episode for all of you listening is this idea of living your unlived life, which I am so excited to dive in with Cathryn of all of her experiences that she has been through and how she helps other people to discover that as well. Cathryn Baker is a dynamic coach, consultant, and keynote speaker who brings decades of experience and a passion for personal growth to every engagement. Over her 37-year career, Cathryn co-founded and successfully exited 2 staffing companies, which is amazing, gaining invaluable expertise in leadership, operations, and sales. After discovering her unlived life on a ranch in the Texas Hill Country, such a cool story, by the way, she pivoted to launch a coaching and consulting company dedicated to helping businesses develop their talent, particularly mid-level managers poised to become the leaders of tomorrow. Cathryn's approach blends her coaching expertise with real-world business insights to bridge the gap for mid-level managers, transforming them into high-impact leaders. What a bio, Cathryn.
Just a
There's a lot.
slice.
I know, just a slice of all of your experience. So first, I just want to hear, because I know from the first time that we were connected through a mutual connection, and talking about getting more of your expertise and your experiences, and honestly, your energy. You have this energy about you out into the world. And I remember one of our first conversations where you talked about, your background, and then this like pivotal moment in your life and now where you are. So can you just share with our listeners a little bit of what your background is and what got you to where you are now?
Sure. I'm going to try to stuff 68 years into like 5 minutes. So,
You can do it.
um, my background is, as you said, is in staffing. So I had started 2 staffing companies. I started my first one when I was 28 and then sold out to my partner 15 years after that. And it was, 15 million. We grew it to 15 million. And this was back in the day. And then I started another one and sold that, got that to 13 million and sold that. And then I stayed on. I had to stay on contractually for a couple of years to meet some metrics, and I did, and continued to grow the business. And I stayed on, and that's when I started to, really feel the change in me. I had always owned my own businesses, and clearly I had a lot of experiences, good and bad, learned a lot. And but then not owning my own, and in spite of the fact that the people that bought me, they're friends today, and I had worked with them, they were wonderful. They were supportive. They gave me autonomy. They did all that, but there was something missing, and I didn't even know it. It took
Mm,
me years to really, like 4 years, to figure out what is missing. And I know lots of people go through this, and that's why I'm excited to tell that story. So, as is in life, often there's a pivotal moment, and there was with me. Our friends had bought a ranch here in the Hill Country. I'm sitting here now in the house, and they invited us to come see it. And this was in 2023, and we said, yeah, sure. So when we walked into the house, it was empty, had been empty for years, nothing in it, nothing, not even a lawn chair. And that wasn't the pivotal moment, but almost it spoke to me. It was like, the clouds parted. I looked at the view. It got inside of me. And we continued. We came back a couple times. Then my friend sent me a text that did change my life. And it said, your unlived life is waiting for you. I'm like, what? What does that even mean?
I
And
get goosebumps every time you say that, by the way.
no, it's like, and I didn't make up that phrase, and I've looked it up since then. There's other, but I've never seen it. Your unlived life is waiting for you. It was so actionable. I was like it's something that, well, you have to find it.
Mm,
So we did. I wrote that down on this little stupid block of wood that I had on my desk that said something like, kindness is good. I wrote it on the other side and I looked at it every day. And I wondered, what does this mean? Is this my unlived life on the ranch? Could it be? And in May of 2023, as we were driving back home, my husband and I said, we don't want to leave. And by November, we lived here. We had sold our house. We had a paid off house, a nice house. I had a good life. It wasn't hard, but I made good money. I had a good job, but something was really, really missing. And it was here on the ranch, which was the catalyst then for starting a coaching business and a consulting business. Both that has been way harder than both staffing companies put together, by the way. And I did enter a coaching program, same one, Julie, that you went in. IPEC, as you know, it's rigorous, and I'm so glad I did, because even though I had never been a coach before, I did coach like things, of course, as a manager and as a leader.
Yeah.
IPEC and the training helped me put it all together, put names on things, and refine my processes. And so that's how I entered the coaching and consulting world. And it's been a ride. It hasn't been like this. It's been like this, and it still is. But meeting you, I actually worked with another coach first to learn how to build my personal brand. And that was vital in knowing how to use LinkedIn as my, marketing platform. And then I met you, and we had our first talk when you were camping somewhere in
I was.
Wisconsin, I think.
I was.
And I knew then this is the right person for me to work with. And then, of course, you have catapulted my confidence and my ability to even be on a camera, and now working on, becoming a speaker, workshops, all of that. So I credit you. Well, it's kind of half and half. You showed me how, and then I had to do it. So
I love that I was just talking to Seth. Just I have so many things I want to talk about from your story, but I love that you take that ownership. I was just having this conversation with someone else who's thinking about joining the academy. They're interested in speaking, and they talked about all these times that they've been kind of riffed by people before, making big promises, and then they didn't meet expectations.
yeah,
And anyone that knows me knows I'm pretty real. Like I try to be as authentic as possible. I'm genuine, but also I'm real in the sense of I can give you the tools, I can coach you through the mindset blocks, I can tell you exactly what to do, but you've got to put the work in, and you've got to also show up to the table. And you are a walking example, Cathryn, of from the minute we started working together, showing up to the table, doing the hard things, putting yourself in uncomfortable. And I think it's because of all the things you've been through.
right.
Putting yourself in uncomfortable. We're asking you to do things that are stretching you, making you uncomfortable. But because of that, you have really catapulted, and you're like the shining star that I'm like, look, this is the example of this is how we grow. And so thank you for the kind words. And also, I always tell people, like, you're the ones, I'm here to support you. As you said, I'm a coach, and kind of consulting in the sense of when we're talking about crafting talks, but you're the one that's showing up and putting that work in. And clearly that's a testimony to all of the things that you've done. I mean, the fact that you were able to grow those businesses to such an amazing level, and then be able to twice
Yeah.
and now start a third business. And so there's a couple different things I want to talk about, because I think there's so many things of your story that can help so many people, and we could have like 10 sessions on all of your life
I know.
experiences. The first thing I want to talk about, because knowing that obviously we both like to geek out on leadership stuff, and it's a lot of your experience as well as you help people with, what would you say some of your biggest leadership lessons are that you've gotten out of in your experience of being a leader?
Oh, wow. There's so many. And, most of them are mistakes that I made that I knew, and in the beginning, when we started the first company, I'm 28 years old. I didn't know anything. I had a degree in psychology. I'd never taken a business class in my life. And so I think the first thing is when to know the difference between being a manager and a leader. And I made those mistakes in both companies. When you're starting out, you do everything. And so you have to know then when to lead and not give people all the answers, and let them make their mistakes too, but support them. And I think that's very hard, especially in startups. It's really hard, and it's different for everybody when they start to pull back and work on the business instead of in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough transition. So that
Mm-hmm.
would be, my probably my biggest one. I feel like I always led with empathy and kindness because those are part of my core values. So it's not like I had to fake that.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a lot of leaders who do not have that. And I think that the other part that I needed to work on at various times in my leadership career was self-awareness. You know,
Ah,
how how are my actions and my words affecting other people? And I'm certain I underestimated that at times.
mm-hmm.
Just walking in a room, you bring the energy into what's going to happen that day. And so yeah, I wish, but nobody starts out perfectly. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I wish, wow, why couldn't I have known all that from the very beginning? Because I couldn't, because you have to learn it. And
Mm-hmm. Hard
luckily,
lessons.
you have hard lessons. But there's another plug for getting a coach. I mean, it's just that's why, for example, I have you, because how can I know all these things? I can go through trial and error, and it's going to take me 3 years to even book a workshop, but accelerate it with somebody who knows what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be a coach, it could be a mentor. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people love to mentor, but I think a lot of people are afraid to ask. So there's ways, but those are my two biggies from the
I
leadership.
love that. And like, you said we both have gone through the same coaching program. I remember when I was looking to get certified as a coach because I had a leader who took what I always say is a coach approach. And it was my first time really getting exposed to a manager who used these coaching techniques. And I was like, what is this? What is this thing? I call it like this ninja mindset tricks that she was doing with
Yeah.
me. And so that's where I started researching programs. And as you know, IPEC is, I always put a big plug in because I have a lot of people ask me, what coaching programs you go through? It's
Oh, yeah.
amazing. And that level of self awareness. And we have those moments where we go, why didn't I know this back then? Like you said, because we have to go through that journey
We do.
and we have to, usually, we weren't ready to hear it or learn it
Right.
then anyways. And so, I know that you also work with, emerging leaders, middle managers, and so sometimes they're kind of sandwiched in the middle. And so these lessons that you shared of, the manager versus the leader, that's a big thing people struggle with. And that's why you now coach people through this too, because you
Right.
see the power of helping people and then having empathy and that self-awareness, huge things from those leadership perspectives. What do you see as you're now, coaching and you do different workshops with leaders? What do you see some of the big things that particularly if you focus on the middle managers that they're really struggling with?
Oh, a lot. Because oftentimes this group of middle managers, they've been promoted up, with literally no training. And it's leadership skills. I mean, we're not calling them soft skills anymore.
We had a
The
whole discussion on this.
critical human skills.
There we go.
Uh,
We love that.
that's the gap of the development gap, I would say. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
often middle managers, I mean, they know more oftentimes than the leaders about the nuts and bolts of the business and, processes and things like that. What they don't know are those critical human skills. So they don't know, for example, here's a big one, how to give feedback.
Yeah,
And do
yes,
a
huge.
workshop on that. I could do a whole day on feedback, really. It's hard. It's kind of right in line there with having difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times a middle manager might avoid it because they don't know how to do it. And when they do it, I remember role playing in a group I was working with. We were role playing, and a very good middle manager came up, and he just so we tried to follow this sandwich feedback model, and he just said, like, I don't know, he said, Julie, you really need to up your game because, your communication style sucks or something like that,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh,
okay,
okay."
so I asked the group, what might he have done better with
What
that or different,
what else could we have done?
I actually asked him, how would you feel if you were the person on the receiving end of that? Do
Mhm.
you feel they all said, they feel like they just went through a performance review and they failed or something. So it's not a diss on him. He didn't know. So, but that can do a lot of damage. And so that, I'm kind of on a crusade now to encourage companies spend the money, spend the resources on developing those emerging leaders.
Mhm.
Don't leave them out there hanging. And most of it is, you can call it soft skills you want if you want, critical human skills.
Mhm. Yeah, whatever you call it, we need to work on it.
Right.
And I know we have so much, similarity in this like passion we have of helping people in this area, and
Yeah.
emerging like the critical conversations, feedback, coaching and feedback, all of these things, because we've seen the power of how it transforms not only the individuals but also teams. I'm curious, do you have a particular, situation where you've been able to either one-on-one work with someone or a team where by implementing these tools you've seen a really big shift?
I haven't worked with one client. Well, I say I have a coaching client actually.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. And it's a good question, Julie. And definite, he had good self-awareness. He just didn't know how to really manifest it or bring it out.
Mm.
And so that was affecting some of his other critical human skills,
Mhm.
and particularly in communication. And he's at a
Mhm.
pretty high level in his organization. So that, he has to be a good communicator, but it was affecting his communication style. But back in there, he knew it. He knew that he was coming across in a harsher way than he meant to.
Mhm.
And so then he wasn't getting the results. So, yeah, I'm still working with him. This
Mhm.
is a case, and I mean, some things take a longer time,
Oh
and
yeah,
there's a
and
lot to
sometimes people
unpack.
want it to like, they're
Yeah,
like, we want it now, we need it solved. It's like, wait, it takes a while to
it
change those habits.
does. Now, a workshop with a middle manager, and I actually really glad you asked that question because the retention level is very low, even in an interactive workshop. If it's interactive, then it can be up to 40%, 50% retention for a while, but there has to be follow up, whether it's with, me that did the workshop or others, but you can't, it's not a one shot deal. Personal development and critical human skills development is not a one shot deal. So, there's so many resources out there now for people to help. But yeah, so that was a good question. To see that big, I'm transformed now, probably won't happen in one workshop.
And I love that you share that. And I know it's like really thinking because it's exactly what you shared sometimes people are looking for, like, they want to see, we know companies and things, they want to see the ROI, they want to see the impact.
Yes,
And our job is to level set expectations around, like, we can get a lot of insight in a workshop
yes,
and you can open communication and people can learn the frameworks, but it's in the implementation and in the support, which is why what you do as a coach is so important as
right,
well, where it's because and maybe it's, maybe not even always one-on-one coaching, but group coaching or some type of support, because
right.
they learn the skills, but then they have to be able to implement them. And that's where I think a lot of people can get kind of hung up, is like, oh, well, I call it the check the box solution. Well, check, we went to training,
Yeah,
everything's
there
fixed.
we go. Yeah, yeah. And mark that off. HR says, okay, they did that. I love how you said support. That really is. And, that can look like, and I've thought about this a lot, it can look like the workshop with the insights and then coaching the executives because it's top down. We all know that. If they're not modeling the behavior how they want their managers to be and act and embrace, then it's not going to happen. So there are so many ways to do it, and I do the workshop I did recently in Las Vegas. I gave them some resources, at the end of the talk, and books and people to follow even on LinkedIn. So at least there's some support there that
Hmm.
they could, get for inspiration and insights.
Hmm. So amazing. So I also want to make sure we talk about, because obviously your journey in running a company and then being a leader and now supporting leaders is a huge facet of what you do. And also we've got this whole, like, we left people hanging on this whole thing of this unlived life where you decided to completely uproot and change your life when things were going, like you said, things are going good. Life was good. You had a house, you had a good, and then you have this thing which that always hits me in the gut when like what's missing, because I remember that moment for myself when it's like, oh, something's missing. And I know a lot of people listening experience that
Yes.
at different points, whether you're in an organization and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I thought this was the role I wanted, but I feel like something's missing. Or maybe you're somebody who's decided to start your business or switch industries wherever you're at, and you have this like feeling. And so, talk us through a little bit of, I know you shared, okay, you went and saw it and it was like, wow, we're gonna do this. What gave you I mean, to me, it's courage. Like, what gave you like, two-part question, like, gave you the courage to uproot your life and do this? And then also, how did that impact you? So you said your husband was on board, but like, what was that relationship, those conversations like when you decided to make this big change?
Well, the courage part, I think, came a lot from my experience and also my age. I was 67 at the time, which is for many people that would be time to slow down. And I had some naysayers, not so much friends as some family.
Hmm.
Why are you doing that? Why don't you just retire? You know, so I think that courage came, and plus I've always been a risk taker. Although those years, that I said that was melting away, and my confidence was melting away. So I think that this was a little bit like, I want that back. How am I going to do it? And how we did it, I broke it down, and this is in my signature talk, into really three steps. And the first one was we had to know, what do we want? You really have to, and that's like we say, oh, I want to be rich. It's not like that. It's like, what do you really want? You could use a coach for that. You could use, in this case, it was my husband and I talking. I knew he always wanted to live rurally and have land. I knew that. That was not my plan, but it became my plan. It became my desire. And then I had to figure out what's stopping me, what will get, in the way. What are those inner blocks? What could be the blocks? That's really the only way to put it. And also, I'm gonna make that a two-part.
Hmm.
Recognize the opportunity. So recognizing the opportunity is really more important even than the blocks. You got to open your eyes, your heart, your ears, everything. And this opportunity plunked in front of us. And so, but they don't always have labels. It doesn't say, I'm an opportunity, take me.
Right.
So we had to
We
do,
wish.
I don't you wish. Opportunities come all the time, but a lot
Mhm.
of times I've read this, they look like work, and that's why people don't take them.
Mhm.
This one certainly was. And then the third point is really with assessing risks, looking at the blocks, and take action. And that's the thing we did that a lot of people don't do. We took action. In 5 months, we had completely done a 180. And here it was, well, there was a lot of unknowns. I've never worked from home before. I've never lived in a town that has, I don't know, 100 people, 200. I don't even know how big Harper is. It's tiny. There's no grocery store.
Oh,
There's no drugstore. There's Family Dollar, and you can get a gallon of milk there. But and then this is, it's rural. We're on a ranch, 1,130-acre ranch. So many things, and I didn't know how to work from home. I didn't know how to have a Zoom call. I didn't know anything about the technology. But you know what? Like I said, it was up and down. It wasn't linear, and I'm still learning, and it's so much fun. I can't even tell you.
oh, there's so many things. Okay, so first of all, isn't it, those of you listening, isn't this just amazing? Isn't like, make sure that you reach out to Cathryn after this episode and share and tag this, because what's so amazing and what you said is like the taking action part. So I want to just recap what you said when it comes to, your unlived life, because you just gave some gold for people on if they have that feeling of like, ooh, something's missing, or what else is there? Is there more? Right? So you said first you have to get really clear on what it is you want and figure out what those blocks are. What is getting in the way for you, whether those are outer blocks, like outside things, or inner things that are happening. You also have to be able to recognize the opportunity when it comes, like having your eyes open to what could be coming. And then you said you have to take action.
Yeah.
And there is where I want to hone in a bit, because a lot of people don't do that. I think
Right.
a lot of people love to listen to other people's story, which is amazing and motivating, go to conferences, listen to podcasts, read the books, and they absorb all this information. But the part that gets missed is the taking action and actually doing something about it. So what makes you different, Cathryn, from someone else, that you actually took the action when somebody else might not?
Some people might say stupidity, but I don't think that at
I feel
all.
like entrepreneurs need like a little, and not stupidity, but a little bit of just like being oblivious to things, or just like not
Yeah.
thinking of what could all happen. I don't know.
Well, and that's really what I was going to say is the overthinking. If you
Yeah.
overthink it, yes, we looked at the risk, and yes, and yes, that thought came up. We put our house on the market like 3 days before the interest rates went up, and we don't have a starter home. So it was like, crap, now we need to find a cash buyer. We did. All of that happened. But, there were times in my mind, oh my gosh, what will happen if we don't sell the house? Well, we'll figure that out. And I made that, thought go away. The overthinking, if you think about any big life, having children, getting married, if you really, really think about that, you'd never do it. It's
No, you wouldn't.
risky. It's risky. There's, a lot of things can happen and a lot of things do, but that's life. And so if there was one thing I would say, if you've made it through the first two steps and you're hesitating at the action, don't overthink it. And you have to take it one step at a time. I do remember when we were here in the ranch, and it was after my first module at IPEC, and you know how it's very intense. It's 3 days of learning and coaching and being vulnerable and all that. And then here I am, and it's the new place full of boxes. And I remember going out to the garage, and I told Ray, my husband, I'm overwhelmed. At least I could say that. And I was. And I'm hardly ever overwhelmed. And he's like, you know what? Let's do it one box at a time. And that's what we did. And I'll never thank him enough for that, actually, because I really did feel like this. Well, what did we do? We're going to be living out of these boxes for years, Of course we weren't, but it looked too overwhelming. So, that's a one step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time,
Yeah.
old
I
adage. Yeah.
love I love that tip though. So for everyone, like just that overthinking, because I'm an overthinker. One of the things I'm working on this year is being more decisive. I'm like I think of everything that could possibly go wrong. I had a manager one time that told me in like a good way, it was good feedback, because I was beating myself up over just not being someone that's like, oh, we're going to do that. Let's do it. I'm someone that, like she said, you poke the holes in every plan to like get a whole picture of what could
Yeah.
happen. And that's actually can be a strength, but also it can limit people from taking action. And so I love that tip to like, it's this blend of getting all the information you need, but then also being able to, I always say kind of trust your gut then to go with
Yeah.
it. And I can't help it, Cathryn, because being your speaking coach, I'm curious that one box at a time part of your story, is that in your signature talk? Because it's a really good one.
I need to put it in because,
Okay.
you're right. And well, you ask such good questions. And when you ask that, yeah, it's like, that is what I did. If you think of everything that could happen, you just never do. You'll never leave the house.
Hmm.
You'll never eat anything bad for you. You'll never do anything.
Hmm.
So, but some people do. I like how you said, like, you look the other way, or burying your head in the sand a little bit. Okay, you could call it that, and I've been accused of that before. Yeah, but once in a while, and it's a self-preservation move.
Hmm.
But you got to pull it out and then face the music, and
Hmm.
clearly we did.
Yeah, and I mean that's honestly when we look at it, the whole like success leaves clues. Like if we look at people who have gone on to do the big things that I think we are drawn to do, which is why we're speakers and coaches, because we have this pull to have this impact, even though it seems crazy to people sometimes. But if you look to the people who have had success, they have had to just like jump in sometimes, like
Yeah.
both feet. Like you've got to you just got to do it, because like you said, there's so much risk and there's so many things that could go wrong, and also when you're driven by this deeper thing. And so yeah, I can't help but just again, when we're talking in our next session, we're going to talk about adding in that stop overthinking, and then even just the way that you explained that story with your husband when you came to him and said I'm over, because I pictured it, you with the storytelling we've been talking about, you're in there, you got all the boxes and you're
Oh,
like I'm overwhelmed, and he's like, all right, one box at a time. Like that's gotta go in your chest if it's not yet. So many things. I want to ask one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap up, because I know we could talk about so many things. You've given so many tips and part of your story. I'm curious for you, Catherine, when you were looking back. So when we started working together, and you're like, I have the, I want to bring this talk, and we kind of have to start it from nothing to like crafting it. When you were looking back, I mean, how was the process for you of thinking about where you were, what happened to you, and where you've been to be able to turn it into the, like, how did that process go for you?
oh, well, and I'm glad you said a process, because that, and you have to trust the process. You have taught me that. IPEC taught me that.
Mhm.
It was, I couldn't have done it without you or some, or a Julie, because, again, I wasn't sure where to start. And I knew that I already had in me that I felt like I had stories to tell, but no clue how to do them, how to unpack them. And so you take us through in my little group, which I love, and
Mhm.
take us through again. It's step by step. I
Mhm.
couldn't be a great speaker overnight. Nobody is. And my
Mhm.
stories took 67 years to grow. So, you don't have to be 67 to have stories. Everybody has stories. But so I loved the process with starting with that. And because you're a coach, that's very apparent in your process.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big advantage, to tell you the
Mhm.
truth. That there's a lot of great people who teach speaking too, but bringing that coaching element, because you have to get in your head and unpack things. You
Mhm.
really do, and be vulnerable and all of that stuff. And
Mhm.
so I don't know if that describes the process. I'm still in it,
Mhm.
loving it. I'll be sad when it's done. Um,
Well, and just for you, one of the things I find when people do this is you have this moment because you're going back and you're going, yeah, where was it? Like you're almost you're unpacking your own feelings,
oh, for sure.
these tough moments you've been in, and then you're figuring out you're creating, okay, what did I do to get to where I am? Like what did Cathryn do to be able to start businesses and then sell businesses and then move out to the Texas Hill Country and then become a certified coach with, everyone else saying these things, like, so it empowers you, but it also, I always say, adds credibility to all the work that you do and how you help people, because you're able to reflect on all the lessons that
Right,
you learned, and then help people through that. And again, I think having a having gone through a coaching program just adds to that, because as a speaker and as a facilitator, you have this new level of awareness and this way to
right,
pull things out of people. And
right.
so for me, it's just an honor to always see people's journey as they go through. And I always just reminding people, like, look at everything you've done. Like, look at what you've all done. And so it's absolutely amazing. And it's been amazing to work with you and to see that journey come out, because you really do have so many skill sets to share with people, from your sales experience, from running a business, from a leadership perspective, from this unlived life, like so many things. And so it's just amazing to be able to see that. So
Oh,
Cathryn, thank
thank
you
you.
so much for joining us and for having this conversation. I feel like we could just talk about so many
I
things.
know.
I love to end with two things. So, one question I love to ask most of my guests is, the name of the podcast is It Starts With You. So, in a few words, Cathryn, what does It Starts With You mean to you?
Oh, it's so empowering. It's saying that whatever you want, you can do it, but it's got to be you. It's not going to be. people can help you and you can have resources and all that, but that speaks so clearly that, and then it's full of promise. It's like the future. It's like
Mm.
my company name is Avanzada, which nobody, unless you speak Spanish, it's hard to pronounce, but that's a Spanish word for moving forward. And your podcast title is the same. It's moving forward.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that that was, I never actually asked you what yours meant, but I
Yeah,
love that. And I love that every single time for 2 years that we've had the podcast and I ask people, I ask my guests what it starts with you mean, and everyone has a different interpretation, but at the
yeah,
root is this idea that we get to do it. Like we get to choose, like we get to make those
right.
decisions, and you're a walking example for people. So I know people are going to listen to this and go, I need more Cathryn in my life. So Cathryn, where can they follow you and stay connected with you?
Best place would be LinkedIn, and of course that's how I found you. And it's been a remarkable community. So I'm on it a lot. I post 4 days a week, and so just look up
Mm-hmm.
Cathryn Baker. I'd love, follow me, connect with me. I'd love to do that, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll answer everything you say, or if you want to send me a
Mm-hmm.
DM, I would love that.
Amazing. And yes, make sure you give Cathryn a follow because you are like a shining example of LinkedIn and being active on there, your storytelling on there. You're
Yeah,
just always very engaging. She's actually just gotten to get featured on LinkedIn Lives and all this for her work
yeah,
on LinkedIn. So make sure that you check it out. And also, we'll drop all the information in the show notes if you're looking to, continue, if you're looking for a speaker on this amazing topic that Cathryn has, looking for that support with your leaders, make sure that you reach out and connect with Cathryn. Thank you so much, Cathryn, and for
thanks,
everyone
Julie.
listening. And
I loved
remember to
it.
go out there and live your unlived life.
That's right.